Alright, so about a month ago, I watched and reviewed JoJo's Bizarre Adventure for the first time with Phantom Blood, and as of writing this, I've now just finished part 2, and holy moly, this was something else. How can something be so ridiculously, unapologetically goofy, and at the same time, so genuinely, shockingly heartbreaking? I have whiplash. My emotions have whiplash, and I desperately need to talk about it. Today we're discussing and reviewing for the first time JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 2, Battle Tendency. So right off the bat, I'm just gonna say that I enjoyed part 2 way more than part 1. When I watched Phantom Blood, I understood why many urged newcomers to skip it entirely. Despite not agreeing with this statement at all, part 1 did have considerable issues, some of which questioned whether or not I'd even find enjoyment going through this series or not. This, however, is in part with the fact that it was the beginning, the introductory part to this widely bizarre story, the first part of Araki's story writing. So naturally, he was trying to find his feet. However, that being said, I can say that Battle Tendency was a lot better for me to the highest degree. Whilst Phantom Blood was a little easier to follow through as it's one ongoing story for the most part, and Battle Tendency has various going on at once, the latter greatly improved on the former's flaws. I mean, Phantom Blood ends like 3 different times for heaven's sake. This part improves on and expands a lot of what the previous introduced, like Hamon for example. I didn't even talk about Hamon that much in my part 1 review because I felt like it was shoehorned into that story, whereas here, it aids this story. From what I thought to be a vaguely bland and generic power system turned into something unique. Phantom Blood introduced the basics of Hamon, whereas Battle Tendency stretches its potential as far as it can go, expanding upon its creative utility through every character who possesses it. This is shown through the various training sequences and of course the fights. The Pillarmen, for example, who are able to combat Hamon through clever tactics, even being immune to it, forced the characters to use this power system in ways we've never seen before to exploit their weakness and overcome their powers, thus making a majority of the fights a lot more engaging and emphasizes the importance of strategic fighting.
Joestar. Joestar.
I freaking love Joseph Joestar, who's the main JoJo for this part and the grandson of 50 years into the future to Jonathan, surprisingly. Can't believe we skipped the whole generation. And who is absolutely nothing like him. Whilst Jonathan is pure, gentlemanly and reserved, Joseph is loud, a delinquent, and brimmed with personality, a polar opposite to his grandfather, which I honestly really like. I wouldn't want the JoJos to be exactly the same for each part going forward. In mere moments of meeting this character, he pulls out a machine gun on Straizo and shoots down the entire place and throws a grenade in honor of Speedwagon. In that moment, I instantly knew I would greatly enjoy this character. He is absolutely hilarious, and that charm of his, predicting his opponent's next line, or simply running away, never gets old. These aren't just gags, they're extensions of his character. It's the perfect summary of his character. He's not just strong, he's clever. He's a hero who understands that sometimes the smartest move is the most unexpected one. And his real superpower is being 10 steps ahead of everyone else, usually in the most bizarre way possible. And his use of Hamon is, well, it's chaotic, unpredictable, and frankly, hilarious. He is the walking, breathing definition of work smarter, not harder. And I love him for it. And I'm really glad he survived in the end. I for sure thought he was going to die. However, Araki subverted my expectations and gave us a different ending, one I am really glad was given. So this story takes place in a completely different setting, during the World War II era. 50 years after the events of part 1, which I view as another win. Something I was concerned with was the continuity of the series. With each part seemingly having a new character and taking place in different settings, I thought it was going to be a self-contained story for the most part, with no recollection to the ones prior. However, I was proved wrong yet again. Part 2 not only continues the same story as part 1, but expands on it. Speedwagon finds more stone masks, Strezo, who I feel like I'm supposed to remember, becomes a vampire, and a lot of the side cast feel more prevalent, and how the events 50 years ago has affected the old and even new characters. It builds off Phantom Blood so well, which not only made for an enjoyable experience, it also made me appreciate Phantom Blood much more than I did initially. Now, for anyone who knows me on this channel, you know I love to talk about characters in a story. That happens to be my favorite aspect when reading or watching a material. The new and old characters in this part are something else. Caesar Antonio Zappelli. I really loved Caesar. So much so that as of right now, he's in my top 3 favorite characters from JoJo's. Grandson to the Zappelli we met in part 1. He's flamboyant, arrogant, and takes his family's legacy very seriously. That's his driving force after all. It makes him proud, and it makes his relationship with Joseph incredibly interesting to see play out. The Zappellis have a bad habit of sacrificing themselves for the Joestars, and he feels the weight of that history. Therefore, when first meeting, he immediately clashes with Joseph's brash personality. Their rivalry is instant and electric. They bicker, they fight, but underneath it all, you see the slow burning respect of 2 warriors destined to become brothers in arms. Most definitely through their training sequences to prepare their Hamon. However, it is Caesar's pride that ultimately becomes his downfall. He rushes ahead into the mansion to face Wamu alone, consumed by a need for vengeance and honor, and walks right into a trap. The fight itself is incredible. I really love Caesar's unique fighting style. His bubble launcher pushes Wamu to his absolute limits. However, it isn't enough to put down the warrior, as he finds an opening that lands a devastating blow to Caesar. And in his final moments, he does something heroic, honoring his family's legacy and following in their footsteps, using the last of his Hamon and passes it on to Joseph. And Joseph and Lisa's reaction when they see the rock that crushed him were gut-wrenching. And this moment changes everything. This death is impactful. It strips away Joseph's goofy exterior and fuels him with a cold, hard resolve, leading into my favorite fight from this part, Joseph versus Wamu, but I'll talk about this fight a bit later. Stroheim. Okay, now, I'm not sure how to feel about him. On the one hand, he's a Nazi, and fuck Nazis. First thing we see him do is kidnap Speedwagon to use him to awaken Santana from the pillar, which ends up killing all of his men and himself kinda. But on the other, he has always been an MVP when it comes to saving us at the right time. He's loud, egotistical, and oh my god, just shut up and finish the job! So yeah, do I love him? Do I hate him? It's complicated. And finally, Lisa, whose name I've heard quite a lot. As far as mentor characters go, she stands out in a good way. I prefer her more than Zappelli. She is a powerful, elegant, and demanding Hamon user who isn't afraid to be brutal and commands respect from the second she appears. I mean, it's shown through her training methods. That hell climb pillar was no joke, and quite literally could have killed Joseph and Caesar, looking in disgust when Joseph even asks to climb it without Hamon. However, it was needed for the two to even stand a chance. That said, it's everything outside of the mental figure to a character that makes her an amazing asset. So around the final act of this part, we learn that she's actually incredibly important to the Joestars and overall theme. She's the baby Jonathan pleaded Erina to save from the burning ship and is Joseph's mother. This dude really peeked at his own mum in the bath, that's crazy. So whilst I'm satisfied with her character, after seeing online that Araki had planned to make her one of the main characters and do more with her but was denied permission from his editors, does make me feel some of her potential was wasted a bit. Alas, I still really loved her character and viewed her to play a pivotal part in the story. She's evidently the beating heart of part 2. As for the older characters, alright JoJo fans, I've come around to Speedwagon. If I ever need a hype man around my corner, he'd be my number 1 pick. The Pillarmen, these 3 being the antagonists throughout, Wamu, ECDC, and Cars. Okay, one quick thing to mention before this, I had a comment on my part 1 review revealing an interesting fact, that a lot of the characters are named after music artists, which I think is really cool, and surprising how I didn't notice. Bill Bruford, Ronnie James Dio, Led Zeppelin, Wham, The Cars, AC/DC, Carlos Santana to name a few, a really cool naming theme. So anyways, the villains for this part. Wow, what an amazing entrance, and that theme of theirs is a bop. These guys don't just have aura, they are aura. They're different to Dio in a good and bad way. Wamu easily being my favorite of the three. He takes a challenge very seriously. We've seen this numerous times. From accepting Joseph's bluff that he can defeat him within a month, and places a poisonous wedding ring onto his heart that would kill him if he didn't show up to the fight in that time, to letting Caesar use his Hamon on his verge to death to give Joseph the antidote as he gained respect for the fallen fighter during their fight, to his amazing fight with Joseph. This fight has everything. The emotional weight to it, with Joseph wanting to wait to take the antidote and wrapping the scarf around his head, symbolizing that he's fighting with Caesar in his place to avenge him. The strategic and creativeness of both Joseph's Hamon being used and Wamu's use of powers in a chariot race setting, and even the way it ended, with Joseph gaining respect for the warrior by offering him some of his blood to ease his passing, and Wamu gaining equal respect by acknowledging Joseph's cleverness and even requesting to be honored in his defeat. Truly a great send-off. ECDC, my least favorite of the trio in all honesty. Not that I hate him or anything, but compared to Wamu and the main one Kaz, I felt as if he was just forgettable. And this couldn't be any more true with the fact that Araki made him the first to go during his fight with Joseph. At least with Wamu, the poison ring made sense. It felt random when ECDC gave him one. I felt as if Araki wasn't sure what to do with him in all honesty. And finally, Kaz. He is an absolute dick. He is disrespectful AF. Not only did he have the nerve to sneak Lisa and play with her legs, not only did he sneak and cut off Joseph's arm, but had the audacity to pose afterwards. That being said, I feel like it was sort of just generic. Like he wanted the red stone of Azure with the mask to become an ultimate being to grant him immortality or whatever, and I've seen this before. He's a great villain battle shonen wise, but in terms of JoJo's, I much prefer Dio. He had more personality in my eyes. The final fight with Kaz and Joseph though is something else. It is quite tense. Because of Kaz's new transformation, he's basically unbeatable. Joseph is outmatched in every single way. His arm is severed, he's beaten half to death, and he's thrown into a volcano. However, in a stroke of pure, insane tactical genius and insane amount of plot armor, he uses the volcanic eruption itself as a weapon, then is defeated by a mix of his own hubris and Joseph's sheer, indomitable will to survive, banishing the self-proclaimed god from Earth. His fate frozen, drifting through space for eternity, eventually ceasing to think is a punishment more bizarre and horrifying than death itself, and honestly is a fitting conclusion for him. To wrap it all up, I truly believe Battle Tendency was damn near perfect. It took the foundation of Phantom Blood and cranked everything up to 11. The bizarre nature and humor met a good balance with the more serious moments. For its time, it holds up incredibly well, and it showed me what JoJo's Bizarre Adventure can truly be capable of. This part was an unforgettable journey. But that's just my take. What do you all think? What was your favorite moment from Battle Tendency? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to read your thoughts. And I have a feeling a whole new level of bizarre is awaiting for me in part 3, Stardust Crusade.